Welcome back to Was It That Good, the series where we look at world-renowned artists' best albums, re-review them in 2025 and decide if they were really that good. Today, we're here with an exciting one in Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory.
This is their debut album, which I'm just going to make a point of because when we get into the track listing, you'll realise how good of a debut album this is. Released in the year 2000, which is 25 years ago now, which is a quarter of a century. Absolutely insane. 12 songs long. Just shy of 40 minutes in runtime, so let's jump straight in with the first track. And what a track, Paper Cut to start things out. What do you think?
This just introduces the album perfectly, all the different elements that you want to hear in there. Great Chester vocals, great mic bars, couple Mr. Hand scratches. Obviously, as a fan of Linkin Park, these are things we've come to expect, but I tried to reset myself back to 2000 and think, imagine this is the first time you're hearing this album. Oh my God, a great introduction.
An absolutely amazing intro. That lo-fi breakbeat at the beginning just works so well. And then when the chorus comes in with the layering of the vocals, it works amazingly. The guitar and the drums. And I had the realization listening to this, that the album actually starts with the first vocals from Mike Shinoda rather than from Chester, which is quite surprising, but also it is kind of Mike Shinoda's band in the first place. So Chester joined, I think it was when they were Zero, and then they became Linkin Park. So to hear Mike come in first, I was like, I don't remember that being the case, but very interesting. But we'll move off that onto the next track, which is One Step Closer, and that initial guitar is just absolutely iconic. And to think that there really hadn't been much in this style prior to this, these are the forefathers of this genre and this sound. How did they do it? How did they do it?
Just coming up with banger after banger. One thing that I really liked about One Step Closer is I felt that re-listening to it in this setting, I realised how much throughout the song it really kind of not particularly slowed it down, but brought the tempo and the energy down a little bit, and then boom, brought it back up. There was multiple times throughout this song where I just got hyped. Like literally I'm listening to it, I'm like, all right, here we go. Boom. And the vocals get a bit angrier, a bit screamier, but never to a really offensive point. But it just all works in tandem so well to create this kind of energy, and I don't even know, it just gets you tingling.
There's so many build-ups where it'll just build up from nothing to where the whole band is introduced, and also the I'm about to break and then it fades out with a shut up when I'm talking to you. It's just that breakdown is absolutely amazing, and the chorus just hits like a truck.
Should we go on to With You, which starts off with some kind of instant scratches, more of a DJ feel. You can hear Mr. Hand getting involved a little bit more, and I do think there's some good moments throughout this album, especially in kind of the latter half where we really get to see every band member shine through, which is definitely needed. But what did you think of this one?
Listening to the intro, you feel like it might be a little bit of a drawn back track and it might be a bit calmer, and then all of a sudden fucking Joe Hahn comes in, bang, there you go, he's straight in there. The noises and the sounds that he crafts are just perfect for this album, and I think he might get enough credit, but personally I think that he's very undercredited in terms of the actual overall Linkin Park sound, because without him, do think they would just be another new metal band. They wouldn't have been the size that they are now.
Yeah, I suppose everyone always talks about Mike and Chester, don't they? And it is important to remember that it's not just those two that are involved in the crafting of these albums. But we'll go on to the next song, which is Points of Authority. This song just completely reminds me of Collision Course now.
Yeah, it's that breathing in the intro, innit? That just works so well. It's really good. The filtered voice talking with the filtered guitar in the intro before it kicks in fully with that weird, like, I don't know, like splash drum sound. I don't know. There's so many sounds in this album that I was trying to put into words that I just could not like fully articulate what it sounds like. And it's just so, like I say, if you're putting yourself back in the year 2000, fresh, unbelievably fresh. Every sound on this album is something that you've never heard before.
I really liked in the latter section of this song, there was more of a choppy stop-start section where it's like stopping and starting kind of the sound of certain elements. I really liked that. But I actually think, to be honest, without the Collision Course version, I think this is one of the weaker tracks on the album. Obviously, I'm not saying it's bad still, but we got to come up with some negatives. I think Points of Authority is one of the lesser songs on Hybrid.
I really like this track, and I think this might be one of my favourite tracks with Chester's vocals. I think his vocals are perhaps the best on the entire album on this track, but let's not dwell. Let's move on to Crawling, which is one of those tracks where you think, what the hell can I say about this?
Well, to be honest, I'd say that this track is the track with Chester's best vocals, especially having seen performances of it live. Some real emotion in this song, especially in lyrical content, which we haven't really mentioned much yet. But if you dive into the lyrics of this song, I think that anyone who's kind of been through a hard time, had maybe self-confidence problems and stuff, can relate to this song in a very deep way. And I think that this was a very good example of Chester's abilities on the mic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just have a bit more of a tendency for the last track. But this is one of those tracks, again, where the intro makes you think, oh, maybe this is going in another direction, but it doesn't. They stay on brand. They stay in the genre. They know what they're doing. They're just kind of giving you a little bit of a tease at the start. And it feels like they've definitely got a template kind of blueprint of sorts of what they wanted this album to sound like, because a lot of the tracks follow a same kind of principle, which then I think makes it such a coherent and such a great album through and through.
Yeah, there's certainly those moments of calm where you think, oh, is this going to be a laid back song? And then just some heavy riffs and heavy beats always come in, which I love. But we'll go on to Runaway, the best rap song of all time. But is it the best Linkin Park song of all time, Tim?
The bubbly intro, every time I hear it, you know, the whoop, whoop, with the in the background, it just makes me think it would be perfect for an underwater level on like Sonic or Mario or something like that. It just has a feel to it, and that carries out throughout the entire track. And I think having that soundscapiness that Johan makes every track really adds a lot. And again, I'm going to say it, I think he's massively underappreciated, and I think he makes this track what it is.
I do think on this track there was more moments that felt a bit like an instrumental as opposed to the whole band, which, as I said, I already alluded to it. It just means that the other members of the band, Han particularly, are having a moment to shine through. But I really liked that because I thought there was still heavy guitars coming in, but it showed a different side to Linkin Park within this track.
I like it when it pulls back and he says, I'm gonna run away and never say goodbye. Gonna run away, with the heavy drums and the guitar in the background. Fantastic work, amazing. I think this is a really good example of Chester and Mike's lyrics and vocals working with each other so well.
The next track is By Myself, which kicks off with an unbelievable guitar riff. It's just like straight energy injected into your veins.
Favorite intro on the entire album. There's that weird noise on the snare hit, and again, I don't know how to put it into words.
If you call it wet again,
it's a little bit wet, isn't it? Though it's that that
kind of soggy snare.
It's a bit of a Slipknot-y kind of beer barrel sound, you know, where they hit the kegs. There's something about it that really, really works. And this track, I can't say much more other than it's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a section where Mike's just spitting bars, but there's Chester in the background just hitting us with the raw screams, and that it just works so well every time. And I think it is really important to remember this wasn't as big a thing at the time. Like, songs like this and albums like this weren't doing as well, or practically didn't even exist up to this album. Obviously, sounds like this are kind of regular now, but when you're hearing someone spitting clean bars over a sick beat with a sick DJ, sick guitars, and there's screams going on in the background, it's just a crazy combination of different elements to work together.
Great chorus, great verse, just great everything all round. So let's move off the Glaze Fest onto In the End. And look at that, it's another Glaze Fest.
Yeah, I mean, you can see why this one did so well commercially. I think the lyrical content in there is fantastic, and it's one that, compared to everything we've listened to, is much calmer and much more relaxed. And I think that this was a good song to really introduce the wider masses to Linkin Park, get them into a little bit of a heavier vibe, but not what they weren't used to.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is definitely a gateway album to a lot of people into either alternative music, rock music, heavy music, hip hop, even rap, that kind of stuff. There's so many genres that you could break into just by listening to this one album.
But I think that In the End specifically does the best job of pulling other people in that don't really like rock and metal, etc. specifically.
Yeah, I think it's crazy that this song has nearly got 2.5 billion listens on Spotify. And you think, surely they've not got any other songs in the discography that are that size, but they do. I went on their top list on Spotify and they've got so many that are over 1 billion and some that are over 2 billion, and you think, if you went back to the year 2000 and told somebody that listened to this album, everybody will know this album in the future, I don't think they'd believe you. I don't think that they would believe you.
Well, I've got an interesting stat for you. I'm not sure how entirely true this is, so please don't murder me if it's not internet. But according to my research, this is the second highest selling album of the 21st century as a whole, which is crazy to me.
It doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it is like the key album for any kind of alternative music. I think everybody knows this album.
And if you are into alternative music, please do remember to hit like and subscribe. We talk a hell of a lot about new albums, old albums, just a lot of music in general. So hit the buttons. But what's up next, Tim?
Next up is A Place for My Head. And the intro on this with the effects on the guitar, Johan going sicko mode. There's a little hi-hat going on in the background. All works so nicely. And then Shinoda kicking in, delivering the bars. It just goes so hard.
Yeah, I think the focus on bars with the also kind of more just drum and guitar beat going on was really good. It allowed Mike a moment to shine through. I think that this is one of the more underrated tracks on this album. I don't hear people mention this as much, but it's certainly not just an album track. It has so many good elements.
The pre-breakdown with the strings, you try to take the best of me. It's got that dun, dun, dun. That is perhaps the best breakdown on the entire album. And, the kicking of the reprisal from the previous sound, once the chorus kicks in with the guitars and everything, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it.
But we're on to the last couple of tracks. Third from last is Forgotten with some Chester bars to start things off. What the hell?
Kicks you in, slaps you in the face. There's not a whole lot more to say. It's such a great follow-on from the previous track. The last track was such high energy towards the end, and this just immediately comes in with the same energy. It matches it nicely.
It matches it, but maybe a little bit too much for me. Again, I'm going to say a slight negative. I feel like this is a song that we've kind of heard already on the album. This, for me, is more of an album track. Not a bad album track, but definitely one.
We move off that onto Cure for the Itch, which is, the solo song for Johan, and it kind of is deserved in the way to give him, his own track to show off his skills, because like I was saying, he feels underappreciated. This track is potentially one of my favorites of the entire album, just for how different it is, how the sounds are, letting Johan just work his magic.
I really liked it. Funky beat. He's a fantastic musician. I wouldn't say it was one of my favourites off the album, but I don't really have what else to add other than what you just said. It's just a good song and a good opportunity for him to show his skills.
It's a little victory lap for Johan, I think. I think he's done amazing on the album. They said, you know what, let him have his own track. And I like that they don't just have him as the DJ of the band, because there's a lot of groups where you wouldn't really know who the DJ was. With this, they said, you know what, on our debut album, you're going to have an entire track dedicated to yourself because you've made our sound what it is.
But we are on to the last track in Pushing Me Away.
Whilst it's still somewhat heavy, I would say this is probably the lightest track on the entire album. Obviously, later in the discography, we got some proper light tracks, but for this era, possibly one of the lightest songs that they did.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they just wanted to close things out on a calmer note, which I don't particularly have a problem with. It's actually quite nice to see a song that's not quite as intense to listen to, kind of brings you down a level before the album ends. But on the album as a whole, Tim, what did you think?
For a debut album, this is absolutely nuts. And I will just say, I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to gloat. I saw this album in full in 2014 Download Festival. And what a fucking experience that was. With Chester doing Hybrid Theory, top to bottom, you couldn't ask for more. And that gave me a new appreciation for it. And ever since then, this album has been up there in my top albums of all time.
Well, I've never seen it live, which is one of my biggest regrets. However, I do think that this is undoubtedly one of the most influential and best, not just metal or new metal, but just best rock albums of all time.
Yeah, alternative even further. I think it bans over so many genres that you can't even put it into a rock or a metal or hip hop or rap or any of those. It's just alternative. It is the definitive alternative album. And they came out of the gate so hard that I think a lot of people at the time would have thought, how the hell are they going to follow this up? But they did, because I think in the first week, Hybrid Theory sold about 50k units. And then when Meteora came out, it sold like just shy of 1 million units in the first week. And I don't think I've ever seen a band go from 50k is not small sales, but to go from that to, what are you talking, like 10 to 20 times the amount of sales for the second album, it shows how good this first album was to get people hyped for that second one. And did they follow it up? Oh, they fucking followed it up, god damn.
And even I alluded to it earlier, but Collision Course, a remix of a lot of the Hybrid Theory songs, is one of the most, in fact, it's probably the most legendary rap rock crossover. I mean, obviously other than bands that are dedicated to that genre, in terms of two global renowned artists coming together, that's certainly up there. But on Hybrid Theory, the original, I think the introduction to Linkin Park and really getting to know each different band member Mike's bars throughout this are incredible. Probably, I mean, I would say the best of his career. You got Chester with some unreal vocals, and also, as much as Chester's vocals are always good, I think that there's some of the best songwriting on here. I'm not sure if that was 100% him, but a lot of the more emotional tracks like Crawling, even In the End, I think deserve a shout out for their lyricism.
Yeah, the emotion across this, both with the lyricism and also the delivery of the lyrics, is phenomenal. You can just feel how raw and ready every track is, and some of them you can feel the angst coming through the voice and in the screams. There's something about Chester's vocals that just encapsulates, I don't know what the word is, kind of like, it's not anger, it's just, he just feels like he's getting his stress out on the track. He feels like he's laying it all out for everybody to see. It's just pure emotion. Exactly that, yeah. And it is just phenomenal.
It is fantastic. But Tim, the question of today's video is, was Hybrid Theory really that good?
Oh, fucking course it was. I don't think it was in doubt for anybody's mind that this album is seminal. Would you say the same?
Yeah, we may as well have just deep-throated the mics this whole video. Like, obviously it was that good, but what would you rate it out of 10? Going back, looking back on the influence it's had, and just as an album as a whole in terms of quality of music, what would you rate it?
Bang on with a 9.5. Unfortunately, I can't give it the solid 10 out of 10 that I've only given once in the past. And the reason for that is because there was just a couple of bits where I thought you could have changed that slightly. But overall, 9.5, mostly based on the impact that it's had. The music itself is fantastic, but over the years, it's just become more and more popular and more people have listened to it. And like we were saying, 25 years old, and I would say the sound still stands up, other than a couple of bits that sound a little bit dated. Overall, I think you can excuse that and say this is an all-timer project.
No, I'll match you on that one. I think a 9.5 is pretty spot on. It could be a 10, really. I just don't like giving things a 10, but there is one or two songs on here that there were little moments where I was like, okay, this sounds a bit similar, or this could have been improved a slight bit, but a 9.5 for one of the best albums of all time. It's very hard to pick it apart in any way.
Just all around amazing, isn't it?
If you enjoyed the video, if you've got to this point, you must have, because you've listened to us yap for this long. So please do hit like and subscribe.
Thank you very much.